the Pingyang Township Twins. Some stories sound like folklore, impossible, unbelievable, the kind of thing you dismiss as rumor. But what if the evidence was so specific, so undeniable, that the people who witnessed it had no choice but to believe? Tonight, we go to a small township in southern China, a place where nearly everyone believes that death isn't the end. In 1991, a mother froze in the hallway, ear pressed against the nursery door. From inside, her twin daughters, who had never spoken a word in their lives, were having a full conversation. Not babbling, not toddler noises. Real sentences. Back and forth, like two adults. For 3 years, the girls had been silent. They barely even cried. But that day in Pingyang Township, a rural community in southern China, their mother realized her children were saying things they couldn't possibly know. And that was the moment she understood. Her daughters might not be her daughters at all. This is the story of the Pingyang Township Twins. Good evening, and welcome to Midnight Horror Society. Here we take the strange and the chilling and tell them slowly, like whispers meant for the night. Before we begin, take a second to like the video and subscribe only if you feel at home here. In the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always comforting to see how many of us are awake together in the dark. So dim the lights. Let the sound of the night, rain, crickets, or just the quiet of your room settle around you. Get comfortable. And when you're ready, let's step into tonight's story. On a humid morning in Pingyang Township, a young mother was bent over sweeping her family's modest living room. The floor was packed earth, smoothed hard by years of footsteps, and the windows rattled gently in their wooden frames whenever a breeze passed. Her twin daughters, Shitsai and Shihong-Wu, were in the nursery down the hall. At 3 years old, they were unusually quiet children. Neighbors sometimes joked that the girls were born tired, because all they ever did was sleep. Even as babies, they rarely fussed, rarely cried, and they still hadn't spoken their first words. That morning, as their mother gathered the last pile of dust, she froze. From the nursery came a sharp, sudden sound, high-pitched sobbing. Her broom clattered to the floor. The twins never cried. Heart-pounding, she rushed down the hall, pushed open the door, and there they were, clutching the wooden bars of their crib, their small faces wet with tears, wailing as though terrified. She scooped them up, cradling one in each arm, whispering frantic comforts. She searched their bodies for bruises, scratches, anything wrong. Nothing. They weren't hurt, they weren't sick, they were simply inconsolable. She rocked them, humming softly until the sobs quieted into hiccups. After a few minutes, their eyes grew heavy. She laid them back in the crib, and almost instantly, they were asleep again. The house fell silent as though nothing had happened. But the image stayed with her. Her daughters' faces twisted in terror, a sound she had never thought she'd hear from them. Days later, life seemed back to normal. The twins returned to their strange, listless routine, sleeping more than playing, silent as always. One afternoon, their mother moved through the house with a basket of folded laundry. As she passed the nursery door, she stopped dead in her tracks. The door was closed. But behind it, she heard voices. She leaned closer, pressing her ear to the wood. Inside, her daughters were talking. At first, she thought maybe they were babbling, stringing sounds together like toddlers sometimes do. But the longer she listened, the more her skin prickled. These were not random noises. These were sentences, clear, adult-level sentences, spoken back and forth like a conversation between two grown people. Her heart raced. This was impossible. Her daughters had never said a single word in their lives. Yet here they were, conversing fluently, their tones shifting as though they were debating, explaining, remembering. The mother's hands trembled against the doorframe. She wanted to rush in to see them with her own eyes, to cheer at their first words, but instinct told her not to. If she entered, the spell might break. So she stayed, frozen, listening. And the more she listened, the more unsettled she became. Her daughters were talking about people she'd never heard of, places she knew they'd never been, events from another village described in detail, names, streets, arguments, even deaths. Her daughters were not supposed to know these things. They had never left Pingyang. The longer she stood there, the more a cold realization crept through her. For most parents, this would have been the moment to call a doctor, or at least a neighbor to confirm they weren't losing their mind. But this mother lived in Pingyang Township, and here, strange things were not met with denial. They were met with recognition. Pingyang was home to about 7,000 people, tucked between rice paddies and low hills. It looked like any other rural community in southern China, but it carried a reputation whispered across the province. It was a place where reincarnation wasn't just a belief. It was a fact of life. Over 100 residents openly claimed to be reincarnated spirits of people who had died unnatural, traumatic deaths, and no one doubted them. Not their families, not their neighbors, not even the local officials. When these reincarnated villagers said something, the township listened. Sometimes it was harmless. A boy might declare he had once been a farmer, pointing out forgotten property lines or recalling the smell of his old ox. But other times it meant conflict. A man might accuse another of insulting him in a past life, and the fight would spill into the street. Or someone would demand repayment of a debt owed decades earlier, insisting it carried into this life. And people paid. They always paid. In one famous case, a young boy swore he had once been a pig, slaughtered by the local butcher. He described the killing in chilling detail. The butcher, rather than mock him, quietly closed his shop for good. No one wanted to risk offending a reincarnated soul. In Pingyang, reincarnation isn't fantasy. It's daily reality. So when this mother pressed her ear to the nursery door and heard her daughters speak of lives and deaths they couldn't possibly know, her horror gave way to certainty. Her twins were not ordinary. They were reincarnated. The mother did not hide what she'd heard. Instead, she spread the word, not just among neighbors, but across Pingyang. She hoped someone, somewhere, might recognize the details her daughters had described. Within days, her wish was answered. A knock came at the family's door. When she opened it, a man and woman stood outside. Strangers. Their expressions were pale, hesitant, but expectant. When the twins saw them, they didn't hesitate. One pointed. Mother. The other followed. Father. The man and the woman gasped. The room seemed to tilt. And then the torrent began. The little girls launched into stories, their high-pitched voices carrying words far beyond their years. They spoke of a different village, naming roads and houses with precision. They described their lives not as sisters, but as best friends, teenagers. And they spoke of how those lives had ended. Through tears and giggles, the twins explained, they had ended their own lives together just 1 month before being reborn in Pingyang. They told the man and the woman how they had walked hand in hand to a secluded spot, how they had made a pact. They described the place, the method, even the aftermath. Who had found them? How the villagers had whispered. They recited details that only the families of the dead girls could have known. The color of their dresses that night. The way one of them had braided the other's hair just hours before. The man and the woman sat stunned, tears rolling down their cheeks. When the twins' mother asked softly, "Are these details true?" They could only nod. Yes, they whispered. Every word. From that day, the twins never pretended to be ordinary children. They admitted to their mother that the reason they had stayed silent so long was because they were guarding their secret. And the endless sleeping? They said it was because in dreams they could return to their old lives, the ones they still missed. Doctors, skeptics, outsiders, no one has ever been able to explain how 2 3-year-olds who had never spoken before could suddenly produce such accurate, detailed knowledge of strangers and places they had never encountered. In Pingyang, no one questioned it. For them, it was simple. The twins were reincarnated. And to this day, Pingyang Township remains one of the most unusual places in the world, where the line between past and present lives seems to blur in ways no science has yet explained.